Russia is our neighbor too. What happens to Ukraine is much more important for Norway's security, for Norway's interest. All the Nordic Baltic countries, for example, I mean, we are very much like-minded when it comes to these issues and are very much stand together in terms of our support for Ukraine. Partly out of solidarity, but partly also out of self-interest.
Can you walk us through the main dealings with Ukraine that you've been achieving here during your visit?
Well, part of the reason I'm here is that I have the honor of being the co-chair of the joint Norwegian-Ukrainian Working Group on Nuclear Safety and Security. Our relationship and cooperation between our two countries go actually years back on these issues. We have made a lot of funds available also from the Norwegian side to ensure the nuclear safety and security of the nuclear power plants still operating in Ukraine. So this has been an important topic. It's in Ukraine's interest, but it's also in Norway's interest and the European and international interest that these things remain orderly, there are no material astray. And in the midst of an ongoing war of aggression, this is something that we're happy to cooperate with our Ukrainian colleagues on.
But what can Norway or any other European country do when Russia continues to attack Ukrainian energy infrastructure? There were also hits in Chernobyl, there were hits in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. What can any country actually do to keep these plants safe from Russian attacks?
I mean, the core cause is the Russian war of aggression. So Russia can actually do something about it. They can stop the war of aggression. But in reality, that's unfortunately not looking likely to happen tomorrow. But we should always remember there's one country responsible for all of this, and that's Russia and the leadership of President Putin. We still can do a lot to mitigate, protect, create resilience. I will be going up to Chernobyl tomorrow myself, deeply irresponsible and dangerous. The drone that sort of hit the confinement of the reactor back in February. That was actually confinement that Norway was sort of, I think, the major international donor in terms of establishing. There are numbers of small things that we can do together. Equipment, more power generation, safety of electricity supply. A lot of small measures that we believe from the Norwegian side we have been able to do. We can be rather pragmatic and flexible about these things. We have the funds available, the expertise, and there's also the relationships and the connections from long-standing cooperation. So that's something we're absolutely able to be doing so far. And overall, it is our impression it's impressive the way the electricity system, the infrastructure has held up under this barrage of attacks. And that had, of course, a lot to do with Ukrainian ingenuity and able to adapt to extraordinarily difficult circumstances.
There's also recently, President Zelensky announced that Norway and Ukraine signed a contract worth $1 billion concerning that Ukraine has the option of buying gas from Norway. We know that a lot of Ukrainian gas storage facilities were destroyed. Also, the gas extraction sites are now bombarded. Do you see that Ukraine is now heavily relying on Europe in terms of its energy and its basically winter capabilities, and can Norway itself cover that need?
Well, Ukraine to a large extent can rely on itself in the terms of, yes, there's still nuclear power generation. There's now even more decentralized local power generation. It's challenging, of course, and we have been ready to help and we have assisted, and we are very much ready to continue to do so. These energy systems are complex, and you sort of need all of the above solutions, and you need extra layers of backup, so to speak. From the Norwegian side, among the several things that we've been able to do in the energy sector is to provide funds for the purchase of gas. It's a bit of it's not a secret, but it's not a well-known fact that Ukraine actually has Europe's largest storage facilities for natural gas. That we've been able to, we're willing to do that again, as has been indicated by President Zelensky. And in the long term, this is actually a very good business opportunity for the European energy companies, making use of the massive energy storage facilities here. But in the short term, it's the next winter, it's the energy security and security of supply. That's going to be our main priority, and whatever we can do to enhance the physical security of all energy installations, putting them in a better position to withstand the Russian attacks.
Well, Norway supports Ukraine from the start, right? We see that Norway has been providing funds, expertise, everything. But if we look at the funds provided, we see that in 2022 there was $1 billion, in 2023 it was like 2, then it was 4, and this year it's roughly around 8 billion. Basically, it's more than Norway provided in the previous 3 years. Why do you think specifically now Norway was able to scale up the support for Ukraine drastically when we see that a lot of other countries are kind of maybe not turning their back on Ukraine, but deprioritizing the support for this country?
Well, let me put it this way. We have national elections coming up in Norway in a few weeks' time in September. I do not expect Ukraine to be a topic in the election campaign, and that's simply because this is not a controversial issue back home. There's complete agreement, practically speaking, that we need to support Ukraine. All political parties in our parliament stand behind, the massive support program that we have for Ukraine. And you're perfectly right. We have scaled up gradually and quite massively this year. The reasoning behind what we did this year is the international developments with lack of clarity where our American friends and allies are going to be, and the need for Europe to step up. What we did was very much part of the wider European exercise in stepping up our support to Ukraine. Nobody wants peace as much as the Ukrainians, but for it to be a lasting, fair, sustainable peace, we need to strengthen the Ukrainian position. And one of the best ways of strengthening the Ukrainian hand at the negotiating table is to provide more support to put Ukrainian forces better able to withstand the Russian attacks.
But you're saying that there's support in Norway, all parties support, people support. But do you see that right now with wars happening all over the world, there's unease with the United States, with Europe as well, that this question is being deprioritized and that people they still support Ukraine, right? But they kind of care less and less and less because there's no major new development and it continues for years now.
Russia is our neighbor too. And although the media headlines for the time being, for understandable reasons, are preoccupied with the Middle East again, what happens to Ukraine is much more important for Norway's security, for Norway's interests. And I think this goes for all the Nordic, Baltic countries, for example. We are very much like-minded when it comes to these issues and are very much stand together in terms of our support for Ukraine. Partly out of solidarity, but partly also out of self-interest.
That's actually my next question, since when we think about Norway is a bit far further north from Ukraine, but Norway has a 200-kilometer border with...
197.7.
Okay. We're not adding kilometers to the border here. Yeah, extensive border with Russia, and also you share the Arctic, you share Svalbard. How big of an issue is Russian meddling, Russian influence, Russian malicious activity is in Norway right now?
Just allow me to be very precise about Svalbard. We do not share it with Russia. Svalbard is 100% Norwegian. And there's a Russian population currently standing at 297.
And they're increasing their investment this year, not only to Barentsburg, but also to Pyramiden, which has actually been abandoned for 30 years, and they want to revive it.
It has, but they claim to be increasing their investments, and claiming to be increasing investment and actually increasing investments, that's a distinction with a difference. So we'll see what happens there.
Russia likes to claim a lot of stuff, yes.
Svalbard is luckily 100% Norwegian.
Yeah,
yes, back during the Cold War times there were a lot more Soviet citizens there. Now it is 297 at last count. Yes, we see more Russian malign activity in our immediate neighborhood as well. There's a hybrid campaign ongoing across Europe with various forms of attacks sort of below the level of military armed conflict like it's happening here in Ukraine. We need to be very clear-eyed about these things. We need to take the necessary measures to react and stand up against it. And that's something we most certainly we're doing together with other our European allies and partners. In addition to, beyond massively increasing our military support for Ukraine, we are now also massively increasing our own defense spending.
And concerning your own defense spending, can you walk me through Norway's kind of plan ahead? Because if we're talking about the Arctic countries, right, Russia's obviously acting aggressively, not only against Ukraine, but also again, like in the Baltics, in the Northern Sea, and so on. The U.S. Just until recently was threatening to attack your neighbor Denmark, well, part of Denmark, Greenland. Do you feel that Norway right now is alone in the Arctic and that it can only rely on itself, and that's why it has to increase its military spending and intelligence as well?
We're most certainly not alone. One of the best things that happened for our security in the past few years is that our immediate neighbors and friends and Nordic siblings within Finland now also are military allies. That increases the Norwegian security and increases the security of the Nordic region. So that's a good thing. We have excellent cooperation with other allies in the High North as well, with the Americans and the Brits and other NATO allies. So we're most certainly not alone. And for the time being also there's a difference between Russian behavior in the Barents Sea and the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea is a lot more crowded. There's more space up north. And the Russian Navy is nothing compared to what the Soviet Navy was. So they are behaving more low-key, more professional for the time being. This could change, but for the time being, that's the reality in our immediate neighborhood, which is different compared to the Baltic Sea and very much different compared to the Black Sea.
Do you feel right now that the US primarily, but also other countries in Europe, will help Norway if something happens on the border or in Svalbard or in the Barents Sea, anywhere? Do you feel that there is still a NATO which will back Norway, a country smaller than Russia still, in case of an emergency?
Yes. We're founding members of NATO. We are closely integrated with our North American and European allies and friends. We have updated plans in place. So in that sense, we believe we can rely on the NATO alliance. And in addition, just a few kilometers away from where I grew up on the Norwegian, well, I was then the Norwegian-Soviet border, and today the Norwegian-Russian border, is the nuclear missiles on submarines of the Russian North Fleet. Their strategic forces. These interballistic nuclear missiles are not directed at Norway, they are directed at the United States. Meaning what we do in terms of keeping a very, very close eye and ear on what's going on here has a direct consequence also for US national security, adding another layer of sort of mutual interest in continuing a close security cooperation.
Do you believe the Arctic can become a battleground between Russia and NATO?
I mean, we cannot rule anything out in these days, but I'm not too worried about that in the sense that there are not really any border disputes to speak of in the Arctic. Everything is actually fairly organized and clear in that sense. There's a established legal framework. The Arctic Sea is a sea, so there's the law, the sea that applies, and all Arctic countries actually agree on that so far. But we have to remain vigilant and ready for eventualities and developments that turn out in a worse direction. We used to have a Norwegian slogan, high north, low tension. That is unfortunately not anymore a precise description of the realities in the high north or in the Arctic, but it remains a policy goal.
Returning back to Ukraine, one of the areas where Norway is actively assisting Ukraine is the investment in Ukrainian defense production. Can you walk me through why European countries, including Norway, are more willing to invest in Ukrainian defense production than scaling up their own production and providing the weapons from the European stockpiles?
We need to do both. But a small story, this is now already a couple of years ago. There was a NATO country that wanted to donate some drones to the Ukrainian armed forces. Well, the reply from the Ukrainian armed forces was grateful, but they politely suggested maybe rather you buy the drones we developed ourselves and then donate them back to us. Which is a story, this is now 2 years ago, which is a long time, because the technological development that's taking place is massive. This is now cutting edge, world leading defense equipment that's being developed and produced here in Ukraine. So yes, we need to do both in terms of continuing to scale up our own production capacity, but at the same time realizing if we are to have quick impact, the most efficient thing we can do almost is to put funding available for the Ukrainian defense industry in itself.
What's the key parts of the Ukrainian defense industry that Norway is interested to financing?
Well, forgive me for not going into all the details, but just one example. What's happening in everything dealing with drones is, of course, very important.
Ukraine and President Zelensky recently told us that Ukraine is willing to buy more arms from the US. US is not selling. And one particular area where Ukraine is lacking, and that costs lives, because we saw the recent attack on Kyiv that killed, as of now, 27 people in the Ukrainian capital, air defense systems. Ukraine is desperately in need of Patriot air defense systems, but also all the other air defense systems that can bolster defenses of this country. Do you see this area as something that Norway can help with the NASAMS, or maybe with persuading the Americans to allow them to sell, not even give, but sell their air defense systems to Ukraine?
Ukraine, among the many needs of Ukraine these days, is of course several air defense systems, because you need various layers of these systems to be able to protect civilian infrastructure, and of course the military forces of Ukraine as well. NASAMS is originally sort of a Norwegian system, very proud to be able to assist, and we have donated several NASAMS systems as well. And we are most certainly looking into how we can, in different ways, cooperate with our American friends in making even more available as well.
And I guess my last topic that I'm really interested in is we're talking about peace negotiations. We're talking about the American side was really eager to see this conflict end in the first day of President Trump's term, then 100 days. Now and recently, President Trump said that Ukraine and Russia just needs to keep on fighting for a few months. What's the Norwegian perception of the ongoing peace talks, and what's the long-term, I would say, idea of how this war can end?
Well, we commend the Ukrainian position that was expressed going back months now, readiness to accept a full and unconditional ceasefire, to be then followed by peace negotiations. And, the Russians have not accepted that, so it's the Russians not being willing to talk another ceasefire or real peace. Our impression is that Russia is not constructively engaging in these talks. They should and we should do our part enable to change the Russian calculation, providing more support for Ukraine and also increasing the pressure on Russia to actually sit down at the negotiating table with a constructive approach.
But there was recently a push from the European countries, from particularly France and the UK, of providing their own peace plan, or the so-called coalition of the willing, which was willing to provide troops after a ceasefire is established. That all ended nowhere. Why do you think Europe, as a continent of half a billion people, can provide a...
Simply because it's not in the news anymore does not mean that it has ended.
But do you think that if the US leaves this war, says that we're interested in the Middle East, everything else, can Europe itself pull its weight and defend Ukraine from Russia?
Looking at just the numbers, we should be able to, because the future of Ukraine is also a question of the future of Europe.
Your membership powers our ability to tell the truth about Russia's brutal, all-out war against Ukraine. Every single membership, every single contribution counts. Thank you.